My boyfriend's ancestral home had a millennium-old female corpse unearthed nearby. The jade bracelet on her hand was a deep crimson, and the surface was carved with mysterious inscriptions. I turned pale upon seeing it and looked down at the heirloom jade bracelet my boyfriend had given me. They were a matching pair. At the interview site, after seeing the bracelet on the female corpse's hand, I nervously pulled down my long sleeves. I secretly covered up the jade bracelet my boyfriend had given me. No wonder Wei Lin had a mysterious look on his face when he gave me the bracelet and warned me, "You must wear it at all times, but make sure no one else sees it." The place where the millennium-old female corpse was unearthed was less than 600 meters from his ancestral home. Local villagers were curious and went to see, but he, who usually liked joining in the excitement, showed no interest this time. It was as if he already knew and had seen it before. Reporter Gu, our institute has preliminarily concluded that the burial object on the female corpse's left wrist had been stolen. A scholar from the Archaeology Institute told me, pointing out that marks indicated the female corpse's left wrist had long been adorned with the bracelet. It should have been a priceless blood jade bracelet just like the one on the right hand. But because the bones had deteriorated and the flesh and corrosion fluids had merged into one, the bracelet on the right had fused into the bone, making it difficult to remove. The grave robbers had no choice but to steal the one on the left wrist. Hearing this, I guiltily hid my left hand behind me, my face turning even paler. Although Wei Lin and I were boyfriend and girlfriend, I didn't know much about his work. He had only briefly mentioned that he worked at the Historical Research Institute, sometimes working night shifts as requested by his unit. Every time he returned from a night shift, he was exhausted and fell asleep immediately. His body was sweaty as if he had just done some intense labor. I clutched the bracelet on my hand tightly, feeling a chill in my heart. Could it be? This thing was really stolen from a tomb by him? The female corpse was displayed on the research table at the Archaeology Institute. Through the glass cover, I stared blankly at the female corpse's right wrist. The bright jade bracelet, after being soaked in corpse fluids and blood for over 1,000 years, had turned grim and eerie. Thinking about the bracelet I had worn for the past 3 months, it might have been soaked in corpse fluids for over 1,000 years. I felt a wave of nausea. Half an hour later, the interview ended. I looked around and slipped into the restroom, attempting to take off the bracelet. But it seemed embedded into my left wrist, refusing to budge no matter how hard I pulled. The forceful tugging left long blood marks on my wrist, with blood oozing out. I barely had time to cry out in pain when I saw something that terrified me. The bracelet seemed to be absorbing my blood. The rough surface of the bracelet sucked at my wrist's fresh blood like long-awaited rain after a drought. Faint blood threads emerged within the bracelet, sinister and eerie. My scalp tingled as I covered my wrist and fled the Archaeology Institute in panic. As I passed by a nearby antique street, a roadside beggar suddenly stared at me and said, "What a pity, such a good age, yet you won't live for many days." I widened my eyes. "What do you mean?" This old beggar looked very familiar to me. He had been begging in the antique street for years, and I felt sorry for him. Every time I passed by, I would give him some change or food. He always wore a tattered Taoist robe. He boasted about coming from the Mount Qingcheng and being an apprentice of a great master. At the time, I thought he was joking and didn't take it seriously. "The blood jade bracelet you're wearing is no ordinary thing." My left hand was hidden behind me and he couldn't see it. But his eyes seemed to see through everything. "The inside of the bracelet is engraved with many spells, didn't you notice?" I was shocked. The inner wall of the bracelet indeed had tightly packed inscriptions. When my boyfriend Wei Lin helped me put on the bracelet, I noticed and asked him. He had smiled ambiguously and explained to me. Those inscriptions were a spell to keep people safe. His ancestors had specially asked a high-level Taoist master for them. As long as I wore it, it would protect me with health and safety throughout my life. The old beggar sneered upon hearing this and asked me, "Have you truly been safe since wearing it?" My mind buzzed, recalling the last 3 months, feeling increasingly eerie. 3 months ago was my birthday. Wei Lin proposed to me and personally put this bracelet on me. He said the bracelet was a family heirloom. It was passed down through generations, specifically as a protective bracelet for the daughters-in-law of the Wei family. But soon after wearing the bracelet, I started feeling cold all over. It was late autumn and I thought it was due to the cooling weather, so I added a few clothes. But even in the warm sunlight of over 10 degrees outside, I still felt a cold chill despite wearing 2 cashmere sweaters. Moreover, my whole body felt sticky and greasy. It was as if I was soaking in a pool of thick liquid, both wet and disgusting. But whenever others touched my skin, they looked puzzled. "Your skin is delicate and smooth, how can it be sticky?" Feeling strange, I went to the hospital for a checkup, but nothing was found. Until Wei Lin took me to check on traditional Chinese medicine, which discovered the problem. According to traditional Chinese medicine, I had an excess of moisture and dampness within me. The moisture had accumulated in my body, unable to evaporate, causing coldness and the sensation of stickiness. Thus, it was just the beginning of November. My bedroom was filled with warm air, the bed heated with an electric blanket, and I had 7 or 8 warm patches stuck inside my clothes when I went out for interviews. Only in this way the inexplicable stickiness and chilliness was somewhat alleviated. But aside from the coldness in my body, I really haven't been sick these past 3 months. After thinking carefully, the only time I could recall genuinely feeling unwell was 5 days ago. The memory was clear. It was the very day the millennium-old female corpse was unearthed. The leadership at the TV station assigned me to report on the scene. I prepared my equipment, but on the way there I suddenly felt dizzy and lightheaded. Though I was seated in a car and the road ahead was flat, my body felt like it was violently jolting. As if I were lying somewhere, being lifted and shaken by many people, suspended in midair. In an instant, a chilling thought crossed my mind. My pupils trembled as I looked at the old beggar. He touched his scraggly beard and smiled faintly. "Yes, just like lying in a coffin." The old beggar said I was already in sync with the female corpse. He pointed to the streaks of blood on my bracelet, saying, "When these streaks of blood spread to encircle the whole bracelet, you and the female corpse will have a soul swap. At that time you will become mere bones, while she will resurrect after a millennium." The old beggar told me that the blood jade bracelet on my wrist was called the mother-child bracelet. Indeed, it was a pair with the bracelet on the female corpse's right wrist. The mother-child bracelet exchanges lives for souls, and what you are wearing is the child bracelet. Both bracelets have soul-swapping incantations inscribed within. As long as the wearer of the child bracelet continues to wear it for a full 100 days, the wearer of the mother bracelet can use magic to swap souls with the wearer of the child bracelet. As the old beggar spoke, I panicked. No wonder I found the bracelet uncomfortable before and tried to secretly remove it. Once Wei Lin discovered it, he who was always gentle, caring, and treated me with utmost care, suddenly lost control and furiously rebuked me. Was he afraid that his efforts would be in vain if I didn't wear it for a full 100 days? I furrowed my brows, still unwilling to believe. Wei Lin clearly loves me so much, why would he do this? The old beggar answered, "Because that female corpse is the ancient Queen Jiang Zimei. Jiang Zimei, she was the longest reigning queen in history. She eradicated treacherous courtiers with thunderous means, decisively killed and intimidated nations into submission. Reigning for 20 years, she brought about an unprecedented era of prosperity, pushing imperial rule to an unprecedented peak. Despite her ambition and bravery, she feared death. Since her ascension, she never gave up pursuing immortality. She recruited numerous occult practitioners under her command, eventually devising this sinister ritual of resurrection and soul-swapping through the bracelets." The old beggar squinted his eyes, his gaze sharp. "Have you heard of the treasure cave in the lonely mountain, where wealth shines as bright as the dawn red? It is said that during Jiang Zimei's reign she loved collecting all kinds of jade and jewels. Glassy green imperial jade, top-quality unburned pigeon blood rubies, immaculate emerald green jades, and so on. These jewels, which today can fetch tens of millions, even billions at auctions. She collected countless big chests during her lifetime. Before her death, she buried all these lifetime treasures in a certain secluded mountain, unknown to anyone. Many have climbed mountains and crossed ridges to find it but found nothing. Where exactly are those unparalleled jewels hidden? This secret has been known only to Jiang Zimei for thousands of years. The old beggar suddenly shifted the conversation. Is your boyfriend very interested in the dreams you have? Since wearing the bracelet, I often dream at night. Sometimes I dream of lying in utter darkness, my whole body cold and immobile. From the corner of my eye, I seem to be wearing ancient, elegant garments. Sometimes I dream of walking into a grand pavilion with carved railings and jade steps. Crowds kneel and worship, calling me Your Majesty, with reverence and fear. A few days ago, I vaguely dreamt of countless ancient, exquisite chests holding dazzling jewels. The gems sparkled so brilliantly that the whole dark cave was illuminated as if it were daylight. Knowing about my dreams, Wei Lin's gaze visibly heated up. He showed immense interest in the contents of my dreams. Every time he coaxed me to tell him every detail. Because those are not dreams but Jiang Zimei's memories. The old beggar explained that while the mother-child bracelets synchronize, they also synchronize thoughts. Wei Lin's curiosity was really about those treasures. Moreover, he tampered with the child bracelet on my wrist. Even if the corpse resurrected with dark magic, she would be like a puppet obeying his commands. The closer the 100th day for wearing the child bracelet, the harder it is to take off. Today was the 98th day since my birthday. After tonight, by midnight tomorrow, it would be a full 100 days and I would undoubtedly die. So the old beggar solemnly told me, to survive, you must have him take off the child bracelet tonight. Back home that day, Wei Lin was as gentle and caring as usual. No abnormality could be seen, nor any intention to harm me. After dinner, he took the initiative to wash the dishes in the kitchen. Watching his busy figure, I clutched the talisman the old beggar gave me, conflicted. Is it true that Wei Lin intended to harm me? From the moment he first fell for me, the bright love in his eyes when he looked at me never seemed fake. I was hesitating when the phone in the sofa seemed suddenly flashed, catching my attention. It was Wei Lin's phone. He had accidentally left it behind. I used to trust him completely and had never gone through his phone. But now an inexplicable curiosity overcame me. Taking advantage of his absence, I quietly picked up the phone and clicked on the screen. The phone, initially black, lit up instantly, displaying a 6-digit lock screen password. After several failed attempts to unlock it, a thought struck me. Tentatively, I entered my birthday. Seeing the flashing screen, I was surprised. It unlocked. Wei Lin hadn't lied to me. He had once said that he would never forget this date. Because it was on my birthday last year that fate brought us together. This only made me more suspicious. Wei Lin treated me so well, did he really want to kill me? Was the old beggar's warning true? I remembered that people around Antique Street often cursed him. They said he was an old charlatan deceiving people everywhere. As I was in doubt, the phone in my hand suddenly flashed. A bizarre countdown window popped up on Wei Lin's phone screen. 2 alarming lines of small text were written. The bracelet has been worn for 99 days. Only 1 day remains until the 100th day. A chill ran down my spine. The old beggar wasn't wrong. Wei Lin really wanted to harm me. His phone even had a countdown recording my death. He wanted to take my life to revive a millennium-old female corpse. After Wei Lin finished washing the dishes, I nervously poured him a glass of water. I watched him drink it all, feeling secretly relieved. I had added quite a bit of sleeping pills to the water. As long as he fell into a deep sleep, I could use the talisman the old beggar gave me to control him to help me remove the bracelet. The sleeping pills took effect quickly. Wei Lin, drowsy, went back to the room and fell asleep with his eyes closed. Just to be sure, I even pushed him a few times but got no response. After confirming he was completely unconscious, I took out the talisman paper from my pocket that the old beggar had given me. While he's asleep, you must place the talisman on the back of his hand. By then, his hand will be controlled by the spell to help you remove the bracelet. Following the old beggar's instructions, I carefully placed the talisman. I watched as the bracelet, which seemed embedded into my wrist bone and couldn't be moved, was easily manipulated by his large hand. In less than a few minutes, the entire bracelet was already pulled to the position of my wrist bone. I held my breath, my palms sweaty with nerves. My eyes were fixed on that hand, which was my only hope for survival. Just as the bracelet was about to come off my wrist bone, a pair of dark, confused eyes suddenly woke up from the darkness without a sound. In a terrified tone, he shouted, "Don't remove it. Removing it will kill you." Veins bulged on Wei Lin's forehead as he tried to get up to destroy the talisman. With a slight effort, he realized he couldn't move his body. Just to be safe after he fell asleep, I had tightly bound all his movable parts with hemp rope, except his hands. "Yen, I'm doing this for your good. You mustn't remove it." Seeing his hands uncontrollably holding the bracelet on my wrist and trying to remove it, he screamed excitedly. The mother-child bracelet wards off disaster and protects lives. Once removed, within a day, you'll die under the curse of the female corpse. Upon hearing this, I was dumbfounded. What did this mean? Why was what he said completely different from the old beggar's words? Wei Lin told me that he had indeed known for a long time that there was a millennium-old female corpse near his ancestral home. He also knew that the female corpse was actually the ancient Queen Jiangzimei, because his Wei family ancestors were chosen by the queen to guard the tomb. But later, due to the ancestors' negligence, the queen's tomb was damaged by grave robbers. The Wei family then began to suffer from Jiangzimei's curse. Anyone loved by a Wei family man would die tragically because of her curse. They would either die a sudden death on the street or succumb to a strange illness. All died unnatural deaths. Their deaths were horrible. It wasn't until later that the Wei family consulted a wise monk, who came up with the idea of using mother-child bracelets to break the curse. The mother bracelet on the right wrist of the female corpse was placed by my ancestor after prying open the coffin. Wei Lin explained that the spells carved inside the bracelets allowed the mother bracelet to unconditionally protect the child bracelet. As long as the mother-child bracelets were worn, the wearer of the mother bracelet could not harm the wearer of the child bracelet. But I felt unwell after wearing it and even felt a connection with the female corpse. I questioned in a trembling voice. Wei Lin's eyes showed a complex mixture of guilt and pain. He said that Jiang Zimei had the aura of an emperor, not an ordinary person. Her resentment and curse were too strong, hence the effects. But as long as I wore the child bracelet for 100 days, everything would return to normal. The curse would no longer affect me. That's why I've been insisting that you wear it every day. His eyes were sincere. It didn't look like he was lying. As for warning you not to let anyone see the bracelet, it was to avoid situations like this, where ill-intentioned people would be tempted. The mother-child bracelets are extremely rare ancient jades. Their special magnetic field, water clarity, color stability, all make them 1 in a million. It's no exaggeration to say they're priceless treasures. The old beggar was always after the bracelets from the start. My mind buzzed, a tangled mess. Who was telling the truth, the old beggar or Wei Lin? If the bracelet would kill me if removed or would still kill me if not removed, should it be removed or not? Breaking the curse is actually very simple. Once removed, just destroy the bracelet directly. Wei Lin saw my confusion, his eyes flashed, and he suggested, "You should trick that beggar into thinking it's been removed and see what he does." I hesitated for a moment. At this point, it seemed like the only option. I picked up my phone and hesitantly typed a few words. "The bracelet is off. What now?" Several urgent messages popped up from the other side. "I'm waiting for you on F Street. Hand it over to me right now." Wei Lin wore an expected expression. The cameras on F Street are broken and it's the closest to us. Once he gets the bracelet, he'll disappear and no one will find him. His eyes turned red as he desperately pleaded with me to trust him. Yan, do you not know how much I love you? If this bracelet goes away, the curse of the female corpse will be upon you and you'll really lose your life. The worry on Wei Lin's face didn't look fake. After a moment's thought, I understood. Wei Lin was one of my closest people. Compared to the old beggar, I trusted him more. I helped Wei Lin unbind and tore off the curse paper on the back of his hand. And the bracelet, which had fallen to my palm bones, returned to my wrist now. I anxiously grabbed Wei Lin's arm and asked, "So what do we do now?" The old beggar had his eyes on us. He spread the word about the bracelet. More and more people with ill intentions would come after us. Wei Lin's face darkened, his eyes gleaming coldly. "So we can only turn the tables and take him out tonight." Wei Lin's ancestors were always prepared to prevent the bracelet from being coveted by the wrong people. They had a master of high Taoist practices make a fake bracelet in advance. When Wei Lin took out the fake bracelet, I was stunned. It was unbelievably similar. The color, the texture, even the threads of blood floating inside were exact replicas. The fake bracelet has been enchanted by the master, and that beggar will never know it's fake. Then Wei Lin pulled out a yellow cloth from seemingly nowhere and carefully wrapped the fake bracelet. He said it wasn't just any yellow cloth. Hidden in its imperceptible layers was a self-ignition charm. Even a person who doesn't understand Taoist practices can easily activate it by chanting the correct incantation. Wei Lin asked me to hand the fake bracelet wrapped in the yellow cloth to the old beggar. When the old beggar let his guard down to inspect the bracelet, I was to chant and set him aflame. I showed a conflicted face and hesitated. "Do we really have to kill him?" Wei Lin took my hand, looking helpless. Yan, you can't be soft-hearted. He didn't care about your life and tried to harm you first. If the word gets out, it's not just us, even our parents will be in danger. Seeing that I was moved, he continued to persuade me earnestly. Besides, when we have a child in the future, he can't be without the bracelet. Without the bracelet, cursed as we are, our lineage would be cut off completely. That day, looking into Wei Lin's eyes, I finally nodded. As agreed, I went to F Street where the old beggar was. I hid the real bracelet in my sleeve, while the fake one wrapped in the yellow charm cloth was clutched in my hand. "Give it to me quickly." As soon as the old beggar saw me, his eyes lit up. He stared greedily and eagerly at the item in my hand. With rough and dirty hands, he lunged and snatched the yellow cloth and the fake bracelet. His rough grab almost knocked me off balance, making me stagger. But he didn't even glance at me, focused solely on examining the item in his hands. "Now chant the incantation quickly." Hidden by the loose hair, the whispering voice of Wei Lin in the miniature earpiece urged me. I opened my mouth tremblingly, but it was as if stones had lodged in my throat, trapping my voice. "Hurry up. It's a rare chance, chant now." Wei Lin kept urging in the earpiece. But my body shivered and I was speechless. No, I couldn't do it. I couldn't bear to watch someone burn to death even if he was trying to harm me. Seeing that I wasn't chanting, the voice in the earpiece paused. Then Wei Lin made a decisive move. "Distract him, I'll handle it," he instructed. In the dark and dim street at midnight, Wei Lin had been hiding in the shadows all along, observing our every move. The old beggar was engrossed in examining the fake bracelet, under the haunting moonlight. He was so absorbed that he didn't notice a shadow creeping closer from behind. To activate the self-ignition charm, you must be within 10 meters of it. Wei Lin silently and gradually moved closer. When the distance was enough, he opened his mouth to chant. The old beggar, still engrossed in the bracelet, suddenly smiled meaningfully. His lips moved slightly, whispering, "Break." In an instant, a symbol light flashed across Wei Lin's chest from the hidden depths. Then the deathly quiet night was shattered by the loud crunching sound of bones breaking, accompanied by harrowing wails. The man behind the old beggar lost all strength, collapsing heavily like a pile of mush. Looking at the ferocious talisman now stuck on his chest, Wei Lin seemed to realize something. He raised his gaze, glaring at me in disbelief, almost roaring. "Gu Yanyan, you set me up?" I stared at him coldly with no fear in my eyes, only hatred. "Wei Lin, you were the one who schemed against me first." The talisman on his chest was a life-severing charm. It was the old beggar's last resort for me, a final straw to grasp. The jade bracelet he tampered with had already acknowledged him as the master. If I couldn't use his hand to remove the bracelet, then the only way to save myself was to kill him. To be sure, after Wei Lin drank the sleeping pills and was sound asleep, I quietly pressed the talisman onto his chest. Wei Lin's explanation was almost flawless, which at the time completely convinced me. It even made me deeply suspicious of the old beggar. But just when I was about to tell him the truth and help him remove the life-severing charm, my head buzzed. I had an inexplicable intuition, which manifested as a voice constantly reminding me in my mind. "Don't peel it off, by no means." I was hesitating, wavering, when my phone vibrated slightly. The archaeologist who received me in the morning had sent me a report. It was a meticulously detailed research report on the millennium-old female corpse. On the cover of the report was a portrait. It was an image of the female corpse's appearance in life, reconstructed from the skull. The archaeologist in the chat couldn't help but exclaim. "After the reconstruction, I was stunned. It really looks like you, Gu Yanyan." I stared at the picture, my pupils trembling. It wasn't just a resemblance. It was exactly the same as my untouched face. I was startled and rushed to the dressing table, staring at the face in the mirror. It was a face so familiar yet tinged with strangeness. The distinctly double eyelids had turned into single eyelids. My clean left cheek had sprouted a few unfamiliar dark moles. The rounded jawline seemed to have narrowed by a circle, giving the face a sharp contour. My scalp tingled as I sat in front of the mirror, stunned. The face in the mirror, both me and not me, also stared back at me in a daze. Her eyes were gloomy and eerie, making my whole body shiver. The old beggar's words were true. Even my appearance was starting to swap with the female corpses. But what terrified me even more came next. When I saw the birth date of the female corpse, Jiang Zimei, my head buzzed again, feeling like it was going to explode. Aside from the year, her birth month, day, hour, and even minute, when converted to modern chronology, matched mine exactly. The years between us formed a perfect cycle. In other words, Jiang Zimei and I had identical birth charts. Suddenly, I remembered my first meeting with Wei Lin. It was on my birthday when he fell in love at first sight and struck up a conversation. After exchanging contact information, he would frequently and indirectly ask me about my exact birth time. When I produced my birth certificate a few days later, he began to pursue me ferociously. So, from start to finish, Wei Lin had been deceiving me. His passion and love for me were all fake. From the beginning, he intended to sacrifice my life to resurrect the female corpse. So, I secretly contacted the old beggar and turned his trick against him. I sneaked the self-immolating talisman out of the yellow cloth and pretended to be too scared to recite the incantation. I lured Wei Lin to a spot 10 meters behind the old beggar. Once the old beggar activated the talisman, Wei Lin's meridians would instantly snap, leaving him a heap of soft flesh. He would die gradually in extreme pain. "This is all your own doing." I gnashed my teeth, glaring at him as he writhed on the ground in a bizarre posture, wailing in agony. "You disregarded life and death for money, trying to take my life. Now if you don't die, I will." As soon as I finished speaking, I heard a few weak chuckles. "Hey, do you really think if I die you won't?" Despite the pain, Wei Lin forced a bizarre smile and said, "I did plan to swap souls and seek fortune, that's true. But do you really think that wretched beggar sincerely wants to help you?" Before Wei Lin could finish, a sudden burst of explosive sounds came from deep within his body. When the noise stopped, his heart had ceased beating. His dilated pupils stared at me in death, his lips curved in a strange smile as if eagerly waiting for me to join him. Even at death's door you talk too much. I turned toward the sound, seeing the old beggar's eyes flash with a cold glint, his smile sinister. Knowing his plot had been exposed, he no longer pretended. Quick as lightning, he pulled out a talisman from his pocket and stuck it on me, freezing me in place. No matter how I struggled, I couldn't move a muscle. "Why are you doing this to me?" Seeing my terrified and confused expression, he chuckled smugly. "In view of your past kindness, I will mercifully let you die with clarity." He explained that the jade bracelet had a spirit and only recognized one master. Before Wei Lin put it on for me, he had fed it with his own blood. Thus, the bracelet recognized him as its caretaker, its master. Taming a claimed object is difficult. If the caretaker is alive, switching the bracelet's master requires extraordinary effort. First, you must remove it from the host's wrist, in this case mine. Then you must perform rituals and chant incantations over the bracelet for 6 full hours. But with Wei Lin dead, things became simpler. Now, with just a few drops of blood, the bracelet will recognize me as its master. He sneered, his face sinister and terrifying. "I've had enough of being a shabby Taoist priest. When the female corpse resurrects as my puppet, won't the treasures in the hidden cave all be mine?" With that, he pulled out a sharp dagger from his tattered robe. Without hesitation, he cut a gash on his wrinkled and rough finger. He muttered incantations that I could not understand. My left hand, beyond my control, was lifted into the air by him. The bracelet began to emit strange red light. Blood continuously dripped from his finger. The blood seemed alive, flying straight towards the bracelet. Just as the bracelet was about to be tamed by him and recognize him as its new master, I noticed the piece of yellow cloth exposed from his tattered sleeve, and my eyes darkened. That night, on F Street, under the broken surveillance camera, an old, dirty beggar suddenly self-immolated mysteriously. In just a few minutes, he turned into a pile of ashes, leaving no bones behind while screaming in agony. I did not heed the old beggar's advice to replace the self-immolation charm from the yellow cloth. Just as I wanted to tear off the life-severing charm from Wei Lin, I still had a strange intuition. A weird voice in my mind kept reminding me, "Don't replace it. Absolutely don't replace it." I hesitated because of that. Was Wei Lin lying, and did that mean the old beggar was telling the truth? I trusted no one. The only one I could trust was myself. And sure enough, both of them were lying. Watching the old beggar struggle and burn beyond recognition before my eyes, with the self-immolation curse taking effect, I suddenly felt a buzz around my ears. The weird voice in my mind reappeared. She was in high spirits, laughing sharply. "Two insignificant ants, yet they dared to try to control me. They deserved to die." The shocking laughter made my pupils tremble and my scalp instantly went numb. Realizing something, I turned to look at the road mirror not far away. The reflection in the mirror was no longer mine. It was a face completely unfamiliar to me. Her twisted grin and dark, vicious eyes stared unblinkingly at me. Sweat poured down my body. I felt a terror that pierced my bones. It was her. She was Jiang Zimei. Wei Lin and the old beggar were both dead. Though the bracelet had no master, it was still firmly embedded in my wrist. In less than a dozen hours, she would still claim my life and soul. Frantically, I tried to pull off the bracelet. But even with my entire wrist bloody and mangled, the bracelet showed no signs of moving. The eerie female voice laughed and told me to give up. "From the day of your birth, you were destined to die for me." The sharp laugh echoed in my mind. I felt my head was about to explode from the noise. Desperately trying to remove the bracelet, I accidentally cut my left artery, and my entire hand was now covered in blood. Possibly due to blood loss, my consciousness gradually blurred. Holding on to my last bit of will, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. It was the only solution I could think of at that moment. After reporting to the police, I felt a weight lifted off me and passed out completely. When I woke again, I was lying in a hospital bed in an unfamiliar place. The blood from my left artery had been stopped, and the bracelet that had been firmly embedded in my wrist had disappeared. My left hand, apart from layers of bandages, had no other marks. Staring blankly at the scene before me, I wondered, had the bracelet been removed? Did that mean I no longer had to die? Rest assured, you're fine now. An elegant woman with a peachwood hairpin sat by my bed. She introduced herself as Chin Siyuan, an employee at the Paranormal Research Institute. The police, sensing something amiss, immediately contacted their institute. After seeing the bracelet, she deduced the cause and effect, and used incantations to help remove it. I handed over the bracelet to the institute for safekeeping. Once it's completely refined, the lingering spirit of the female corpse in the bracelet will dissipate and never resurrect. Chin Siyuan paused and gave me a polite smile. Congratulations on choosing to call the police at the last moment. It saved your life. On the day I was deemed healthy enough to be discharged, Chin Siyuan came by to confirm the final record. Much like solving a police case, their department needed to document every paranormal event. Are you sure you have explained all the details with nothing left out? She asked. I smiled slightly, shook my head, and confidently said, yes. Shortly after being discharged, I received a message from the Archaeological Institute. They said the original restoration image of the female corpse's appearance was incorrect. An algorithm error during data generation caused the final image to resemble me closely. Looking at the new restoration image they sent, there was no mistake. It was the face I saw in the road mirror that night. I would never forget the face of Jiang Zimei. Later on, an odd incident happened at the Archaeological Institute. The bracelet on the right wrist of the millennium-old female corpse turned into stone overnight. After reporting the news about the female corpse, I resigned from the station. I used my savings to start a new career as a travel blogger. Once, while traveling alone, I discovered a hidden cave on a remote mountainside. Bending down to enter, the cave was filled with sparkling treasures like daylight. Looking at the treasure chests, I smiled with satisfaction. It's just like in my dream.